Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Becoming Bulletproof and Friday Night Live. I hope everyone in the house has had a good week. I am glad that it is Friday. I've got a day of beautiful weather ahead of me tomorrow on Saturday. Lots of things planned to just enjoy that time out there, and I can't wait. So I hope everybody is in kind of a similar mode. Been a long week, been a busy week, been a good week. But tonight, Friday Night Live, we're diving into a really important subject, and that's repairing trust. But it's not what you think. It's not what you think. So bear with me. I want you first off, if you are here and ready and glad it is Friday, just like I said, give me a one in the chat, drop a one in the comments, and let me know that you are indeed wherever you are watching, however you're tuning in, whether this is live or the replay, and you might be watching this on Tuesday. Friday's coming. All right. Welcome to Friday Night Live. And again, welcome to this incredible community that we're starting to build this year, Becoming Bulletproof. So let's get into our training on repairing trust. You know, trying to repair a broken trust is like trying to reapply a piece of scotch tape or masking tape, any kind of tape, after it's been ripped off. I mean, think about it. I mean, you've used that tape to hang something, okay? Something important, something valuable, but it peels away. And you try to press it back, you try and smooth the wrinkles out, willing it to stick again. We've all been here. We've all done this at one time or another. You are hoping and expecting, yeah, it's going to have some of that strength left, but it never does. It never has the same strength. It's lost its adhesive power. It's lost its identity. This is especially true of a trust that you have with yourself. Everybody talks about rebuilding trust with partners, friends, family after it's been broken. But here's the truth that nobody wants to admit here. When you've broken the trust with yourself through self betrayal, through ignoring your intuition, or just living inauthentically, you can't just patch it up. That used piece of tape is going to keep failing you at your most critical moments. You need to recreate something entirely new and stronger. Trying to force that old sticky dust covered ineffective tape back into its place is why so many of us stay stuck in transition, in limbo for years. Again, I just want to welcome everybody to Becoming Bulletproof. This is where we discuss our biggest flops and our darkest skeletons and the ways in which that we're going to use those experiences to create a bulletproof life, a life that we all deserve to live. So again, wherever you are and however you're tuning in, thank you so much for making Friday Night Live part of your beginning weekend. Again, I'm Thomas. I'm your host. I'm a certified high performance coach. I'm a former actor, although I do still act on occasion, a writer, published author, twice divorced, dad of daughters. I'm just learning every single day how to love this life better. So today we're peeling back the layers on this rarely discussed subject, but it's absolutely crucial for everybody in rebuilding after a major life transition. And it's broken trust, but again, it's not necessarily with somebody else, it's with yourself. That's what's keeping you from moving forward. Let me expand a little bit on what I mean by this metaphor. Okay. Picture this. You have a cherished photograph. Maybe it's your graduation, your wedding, a perfect day with your kids, a birthday. That photo represents a core memory, core part of your identity. After all, only those types of photos are we going to frame and put on the wall, right? This represents your authentic self, your most meaningful experiences. The wall itself, the wall is your life's storyline, the journey you're on. And that's why you have multiple pictures and multiple memories, because there's multiple events. The tape is what's connecting your identity to your life story. It's connecting that core memory to your timeline of your life. It's the trust relationship that you have with yourself. When that tape fails and the photo crashes to the ground, most people make a critical mistake here. They focus all of their energy on trying to salvage the same piece of tape, pressing it back, rubbing it, willing it to stick again. I've even in my life, I've even tried to use a little super glue on the tape to get it to be sticky again. We believe that if we can't make that original tape work the way it was originally intended, then something is fundamentally wrong with us and our story. But here's the truth, and I need you to listen to this. The photo isn't damaged. Just because the tape broke doesn't mean the wall's going to be damaged, doesn't mean that the picture is going to be damaged. Your core identity, your authentic self, your capacity for joy and meaning, that's all still intact. This is what most trauma responses and some processes for recovery don't tell you. Your trauma is intact. The wall isn't the problem either. Your life's journey continues whether or not you acknowledge it. It's time. It's gonna always tick away. It's just the connection between the two things, the trust that needs replacing, not necessarily repairing. Mel Robbins puts it this way in her book, High Five Habit. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you're teaching your brain that you can't be trusted. When life transitions shake us up, from a divorce or a job loss or health crisis, we often interpret this as evidence that we're fundamentally flawed. But it's not the picture that's flawed. It's just that old adhesive no longer serves us piece of tape. Jay Shetty explains it this way in his book, Think Like a Monk. He says this: trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. The buckets have spilled here. Your old way of trusting yourself has failed. It's gone. But that doesn't mean that you need to discard the photo or blame the wall. Sometimes, we take our anger out on the wall and we'll just even punch a hole in the wall. You simply need a better adhesive solution. Seeing yourself as a victim of broken trust is like obsessing over that failed piece of tape, repeatedly trying to make it work over and over and over again, growing increasingly frustrated when it won't hold, when it won't work, but choosing to create a new narrative, like I'm building stronger trust than I was before. That's what you're doing to recognize that you can replace the tape with something better without having to feel like you have to strip the wall down or get a different picture. This doesn't diminish the photo's value. It enhances it by connecting it more securely to your life's wall. In fact, that new connection, that industrial strength adhesive that replaces the flimsy tape, that actually adds meaning to the picture. Every time you reconnect your authentic self to your life with stronger trust, you add another layer of wisdom and discernment to your identity. The photo becomes more valuable, not less valuable, because of what it has endured and survived. You see it? The greatest liberation of all comes when you realize that replacing the tape isn't failure. That's the process of becoming more wise and discerning and experienced. It's not about pretending the old tape didn't fail. It's about honoring the failure by creating something better in its place. Your identity isn't the problem. Your life story isn't the problem. It's just time for a better connection between them. So what happens when you keep trying to reapply that same piece of tape over and over again? Well, the photo, which represents your dreams, your potential, your future, you're going to continue to drop it and it's eventually going to break if you don't fix this. You're going to hear the glass break over and over. You're going to stay living in the gap between who you are and who you know you could be. never really living that person. You're going to make decisions with a fraction of the power because there's always that little voice in the back of your head saying, but can I really trust myself in this time? Can I trust myself with this decision? I've seen it happen with my clients countless times. They leave a toxic relationship, but bring the same self doubt into the next one. And then they quit a soul crushing job or carry the same insecurity into their next position. They swear they'll honor their health after a wake up call, but fall right back into the old patterns within weeks. Every single time, it's like they're pressing that same piece of used tape back onto that wall, hoping that somehow this time it's going to hold the weight. The cost is enormous. You hold back in a new relationship because you don't trust your judgment. You play small in your career because you don't trust your capacity or your talent. You hesitate to make bold moves because you've lost faith in your own decision making. Your life becomes a series of half commitments, partial engagements, one foot in, one foot out of every decision you're going to make. Brendon Burchard puts it bluntly in his book, High Performance Habits. He says this: doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. That hurts for me to hear myself. Because when that doubt is self-directed, when I fundamentally don't trust myself, it's not just one dream at stake. It's every possibility for everything I've ever wanted to do. And the ultimate price is living the rest of my life looking over my shoulder at myself, second guessing myself, every instinct I have, and never experiencing the freedom and the power that comes from trusting myself to figure it out. That's not rebuilding after a transition. That's allowing one chapter of your entire story to contaminate the rest of the book. Before we dive deep into this, I want to speak a minute about this community. And this won't be long. But first, I want to thank each of you for being part of this community. The first 120 or so or thereabout members of this community, we are starting something very new here, and I really am thrilled and honored that you're coming along with me for this ride. Here in this community, Becoming Bulletproof, we are focusing on several things. Number one, understanding what broken means. Instead of listening to the world, in all aspects of what that means, we're going to break it down in this community and understand in real terms, what does it mean to be broken? And it's not what you've been told. Next, we're going to talk about how we can change our focus, because the process of building a bulletproof life follows a very specific thread or specific roadmap. And that roadmap, after you understand broken, is very clear. Your focus will determine your practice. Your practice will determine the person that you become. And that's how we build the bulletproof life, the life we all deserve. That's what we're doing here in this community. Okay, so this is not for the downtrodden. This community is not for just patting everybody on the back and saying, over and over and over again, in our sorrow, it's okay to stay there. It is absolutely okay to feel those things and to process the sorrow and the sadness of whatever it is that you have lost. This community, though, is always going to be forward thinking. We're going to be looking at our past through a lens that focuses onward, so that we can take what we've learned from our failure and create a superpower out of it, creating that shield, that bulletproof armor that we need to live that life free from any fear ever again. So I want to thank everybody for being part of this community. And I want to ask you a personal favor. I'd like to ask you to think of two people in your life, just two people in your network. Maybe they're close friends, family, maybe they're coworkers, maybe you don't know them really well. Two people that you believe need this message, need this community, need this skill set, need this strategy, need this focus and repurpose of their life story. I want you to invite them to the group, invite them to this community. Everything you get in this community will always be free. Yes, from time to time, I'll have paid trainings and webinars and trainings that we're gonna workshops that we're gonna be doing later on this year. But everything in this community right here is always going to be free to you just because you're here. So thank you guys for joining this community and helping us to grow it. Because in my mind and in my experience, we look around at our world, we look around at our country, we look around at everything that we're seeing going on, and I believe there's never been a more important time to be good at this and to focus on this message and this path and this recovery. All right. On that note, let me share a little bit about my personal experience on this topic. Broken self trust. Listen, I've been divorced twice. Okay. I know what it's like to not trust myself. After my second divorce, I wasn't just questioning my ex partners, my ex spouses. I was questioning everything about who I was. I mean, think about if you've watched Friends and the whole character of Ross, and he was always scared about being divorced 3 times and now he's worthless. I've been there. I understand how that feels. My judgment, my intuition, my worth, my ability to perceive reality accurately, gone. I stayed in relationships that weren't working. I ignored red flags. I betrayed what I knew deep down to be true. And in both cases, I was not the one that left the relationship first, but I was definitely responsible for my part in creating an environment in which that exit happened. I remember the exact moment I realized how broken my self trust was after my second divorce. I was standing in my kitchen. I was trying to decide whether to accept a casual meet and greet from someone I had met in a support group, and just simple decision, right? Just casual meeting. Yes, it was a woman, but I froze. I was completely paralyzed. I literally called 3 different friends asking what I should do. I mean, over coffee, really. That's when it hit me. I no longer trusted myself to even make the smallest decisions. It was like I'd used up all my tape trying to hold together the relationships that were meant to fall apart. And now I was standing there with this wrinkled, dusty, stretched out little piece of tape trying to make it stick to some new casual situation. It just wasn't holding. I remember sitting across from my therapist about 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, and I was saying, I don't know if I can trust myself to make good decisions anymore. There was a long silence. I swear it was an hour. It was probably about 10 seconds, but she asked me a simple question and it floored me. She asked me this, and I'll never forget it. Have you ever apologized to yourself for the ways you betrayed your own trust? My friends, that question hit me like a truck. I'd spent months paralyzed by what my exes did wrong, how they hurt me, what I should have seen, what I should have done, what others should were telling me to watch for, to do, to change, to fix. But I hadn't addressed the fundamental breach of trust with myself. I hadn't acknowledged how often I'd overridden my own intuition. That little still small voice, that I'd silenced it and I ignored my own needs. I tried all the usual self-help approaches. I made lists, the good, all my good decisions and counterbalance the bad ones. I've recited affirmations about trusting myself. I tried to convince myself that my judgment wasn't that really, as flawed as I thought it was, but it was exactly like trying to reapply a piece of tape that had lost its stickiness. Nothing was holding. There was this one night, and I'll never forget it, when I was trying to make a decision about whether or not to take a new job. I'd made pro and con lists, consulted everybody I knew, read, parts of books about decision making up to this point, but I still couldn't commit. This was right after about 3 a.m. in the morning. I was pacing in my bedroom for hours when I caught my reflection in my mirror. I looked exhausted, fractured. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't just struggling with this decision. I was struggling with every decision because I was using old, ineffective methods to build trust with myself. The breakthrough came when I realized I needed to stop trying to repair the old broken trust. And instead, I needed to build something entirely new. I didn't need to fix my relationship with myself. I needed to create a completely different one based on different principles, different values, different experiences. I stopped focusing on the past betrayal and I started creating new evidence, new patterns, new commitments, not to repair, but to rebuild from the ground up. Instead of reusing that old failed tape, I went out and I got industrial strength Gorilla Glue adhesive. I started with my tiny decisions that aligned with my values. I stopped asking others' opinions before checking with myself first and just asking, what do I want? What do I think is the right decision? I began a practice of sitting quietly every morning, asking myself, what do I know to be true today? And what am I grateful for? And then I honored whatever came up. That shift changed everything. Instead of constantly looking backwards at where trust had broken down, I started looking forward to creating a new track record with myself first. And that's when my rebuild, my reinvention really started to happen. My father said this. He is the first person that I remember saying this. I'm sure it was not his original quote, but I'm going to share it here. My father, Dan Goddard. This is where I found it from him. It is always going to be easier to start something new than it will be to fix something that's old. That starts and ends with this conversation. And when I recognized that it wasn't something I had to fix anymore, I've been trying for years. It was something I needed to create from brand new. That's when it really started to happen for me. So I'm going to share 3 supporting points as I normally do to kind of expand on this topic and hopefully give you guys some tools and some skills to be able to focus in where you need help in this conversation from a standpoint of self trust. But before I share the 3 game changing strategies that transform my relationship with myself, I do want to remind you of a couple things. You do have a couple of other free resources through this group. One is the ebook, The Bulletproof Mindset, where I lay out this framework for the bulletproof life, talking about the mindset shifts that we need to make. That is available at the link. You have the link here in one of the comments on this live, and it's also available in any one of the profiles that you might be watching from. And just go to this website, becomingbulletproof.info/resources, and you get your copy of the book. All right. So let's get into these three points. Okay. Transformational truths about building a new trust with yourself after a major life transition. So point number 1, don't repair the trust. Create a new trust agreement. Okay. James Clear writes in Atomic Habits, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. The problem with trying to repair broken self-trust is that you're still operating within the same flawed system that led to the betrayal in the first place. It's the worn out tape. Okay, think about that piece of tape specifically. Even if you could somehow get it to stick temporarily, it's the same tape with the same vulnerabilities, the same weaknesses that caused the failure in the first place. What you need isn't better tape reapplying techniques. You need a completely different tape, a new solution. Lisa Turkhurst explains in It's Not Supposed to Be This Way. That's her book. She says this: sometimes to move forward, we have to completely redefine what moving forward looks like. I mean, seriously, we have looked at this roadmap and everybody says, well, just, try doing better things or try feeling better or, try being more active. What specifically do we want that roadmap to look like? Does being more active mean going to the gym? Does it mean going for a hike? Does it mean going camping? Talk to yourself about what those specific things look like. You don't need to fix the old trust. You need to establish a completely new trust agreement with yourself. What this looks like in practice is something like this. Explicitly define the terms of your new relationship with yourself, okay? What you will and what you won't tolerate, your non-negotiables, how you will communicate with yourself, how you will handle conflict. Then create a clear, specific way that you're going to hold yourself accountable that's different from how you did in the past. Establish a new metric for success that's not based on your old definition of trust. Okay, I remember a specific turning point in my own journey here after months of trying to repair my own broken trust. I sat down and I wrote out an actual contract with myself. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it really does work. Instead of vague intentions, to trust myself more. Okay. I wrote down exactly what my new relationship with myself is going to look like. Something like this. And this is an excerpt from one of my first versions, and I've done several since, but it's something like this, and you're free to use this. Okay. It said something like this: I, Thomas, commit to checking in with my body before making decisions. I commit to waiting 24 hours before saying yes to things that I don't immediately feel right. I commit to writing down my intuitions and reviewing them regularly to strengthen that muscle. That's it. Something simple like that. Just a statement of commitment to yourself and how you're going to practice trusting yourself. Okay. That wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about establishing something entirely new, just like replacing that worn out piece of tape with industrial strength mounting brackets. Okay. Consider Oprah Winfrey's journey. Oh, after years of struggling with her weight and making public commitments that she couldn't keep, she stopped trying to repair her broken trust around this issue. Instead, she created an entirely new agreement with herself, one that wasn't about weight at all, but it was about overall health, overall well being. This wasn't repairing the old, broken, torn tape. It was creating a completely different adhesive for her. For me, this meant stopping the endless postmortems, okay, on my failed marriages, and instead creating a new agreement with myself around my divorces. I'm gonna something like this, and this is from my journal. I will speak honestly to myself even when it's uncomfortable. I will check in with my body signals every day, and I will act on what I know rather than what I hope for. These weren't attempts to fix what was broken, they're foundations of a completely new relationship with myself. All right. Point number 2: evidence creates trust, not intentions or promises. Brendan Burchard emphasizes this in his book, High Performance Habits. Trust is built on consistency. After a life change, a major life transition, we often try to rebuild self trust through intentions or promises rather than concrete evidence. Okay, practice. This is where the tape analogy becomes particularly relevant here. Because no matter how much you want that used piece of tape to stick again, what matters is whether it's actually going to hold under pressure. Think about it this way: when you're trying to change a habit, you're not going to know if you really change that habit until you have an opportunity to do the old habit again. You can stare at it all day long. You can will that new habit to work, but the only real test, does it actually work in the pressure of the moment when I really want to do it? Does that tape actually hold when the weight of the photo is pulling on it? Your intentions, your promises to yourself are meaningless without that evidence. I learned this the hard way after my divorce. I kept making grand proclamations to myself and others about trusting my gut, honoring myself, but then I'd fall back right into those same patterns within days, if not weeks. It was like repeatedly pressing that same failed piece of tape back into the wall, making the same hopeful declarations every single time, only to have it fail again and again and again. I don't do New Year's resolutions anymore for this reason. My divorce ruined New Year's resolutions for me, and quite frankly, New Year's resolutions are absolutely ridiculous. They don't. How many of those resolutions last beyond January 6th? I don't know. But for me, I would much rather look at how far I've come and use that evidence as motivation and intention to continue on and grow rather than saying, I'm going to do all five of these things today or this year. Mel Robbins puts it this way, pretty bluntly, actually. Your brain doesn't care what you say, it only cares what you do. To build new trust with yourself, you need to create small, achievable commitments specifically designed to be kept, to be kept, to be honored. Document, celebrate every piece of evidence that you're trustworthy. Okay. Gradually increase the stakes only after establishing a clear, consistent pattern of reliability. That creates momentum and that establishes and releases the hormones you need to continue doing that thing. So here's a concrete example from my own life. After realizing intentions weren't enough, I started with ridiculously small commitments. I would set my alarm for 7 a.m. and promise myself I'd get up without hitting snooze. That's it. For me, that was big. Many of you are going to think that's small, but not changing my entire morning routine or becoming a productivity master, just getting up when I said I was going to get up. When I succeeded, which I did because I made it achievable, I physically wrote down those achievements in my journal. I kept my word to myself today because I got up without hitting snooze. I did this for 2 solid weeks before adding another small commitment. I mean, it sounds trivial here, but think about it. Each one of these tiny kept promises is like applying a fresh piece of tape all over again, each one stronger than the last. Take a look at the remarkable story of David Goggins, former Navy SEAL, ultra marathon runner. After years of self betrayal through poor health, avoidance of his potential, and more, he didn't just try to repair trust with himself through promises to do better. He created daily, unmistakable evidence through his accountability mirror practice. And many of you have heard about this, where he would make commitments to his reflection and then physically check them off. Okay, this wasn't about repairing old trust, it's about creating the overwhelming evidence of new trust so you can keep moving forward. In my own journey, I started with ridiculously small commitments. Going to bed at the time I said I would, getting up at the time I said I would, drinking the amount of water I promised myself to do, taking 5 minutes for meditation every single day, like I said I was going to do. These weren't impressive goals by any means, but they are evidence generators. Each one keeps a promise. Each one is a promise kept, and that becomes a brick in the foundation of my new relationship with myself. Over time, those small evidences accumulate into a trust that will be stronger than anything that you have ever experienced before. Point 3, self trust requires a new relationship with failure. Guys, you've got to change your relationship to the failure in your life if you're ever going to move beyond it, learn from it, much less make it, your failure, one of your superpowers. Jay Shetty notes in Think Like a Monk that the way we respond to failure determines how long it will affect us. Some of you listening right now are still years after your failure being controlled by it. It is still influencing you and impacting you in your life in many ways maybe you're not even aware of. When rebuilding trust with yourself after a long life transition or a major shift, your relationship with failure becomes very crucial. Going back to our tape analogy, when that tape fails and your photo crashes to the floor, what's your reaction? If you immediately blame the tape, try the same piece of tape again, or give up hanging the photo altogether, you're stuck in the old paradigm. The new approach recognizes that failure is information, not indictment. Okay. It's evaluation, not judgment. Failure is giving you valuable data of what didn't work so that you can apply different things to make it work in the future. In the old trust paradigm, each failure was evidence that you can't be trusted. In the new trust agreement, failure needs to be redefined completely. It's not a breach of trust, it's simply data that helps you redefine your approach. I remember one of my most painful post divorce lessons. About a year after my separation, um, after my divorce, I started seeing someone casually. Turned out to be remarkably similar to my ex in a lot of the wrong ways. When I finally recognized the pattern, my first reaction was devastating self-doubt. I was telling myself, see, you can't trust yourself. You haven't learned anything. You're going back into you're looking for the same type of individual. But then I tried something a little different. Instead of seeing this as proof of my broken trustworthiness, I got curious. I journaled about what had attracted me to this person, what red flags I'd ignored, what needs I was trying to meet. And this failure became data, a data point, not a death sentence for my self-trust. James Clear explains it in his mindset shift. He says failure is not a bug of learning, it's a feature. When building a new self-trust, we've got to distinguish between a failure of action and a failure of trust. Not achieving a goal versus not being honest with yourself about it. Okay? I want you to create a specific protocol for how you'll handle a disappointment that strengthens rather than weakens your trust. Focus on the consistency of the approach rather than the perfection of the outcome. Here's how this played out in my life. I created what I call my failure protocol, where whenever I experienced a setback that would have previously destroyed my self trust, I would follow these steps, really simple, and you're free to use this as well for yours. One, I acknowledged what was happening without judgment. Okay. Acknowledge what happened without judgment. Two, I identified one thing that that I did that aligned with my values. Even if the outcome wasn't what I wanted, what's one thing that I did that does align with who I am as a person, my identity, my values? And then three, extract one lesson I could apply toward the next time this comes up. Okay? Then make one small commitment based on that lesson. So again, those 4 points, those 4 steps in and you're free to write these down. This is the failure protocol that I use. One is acknowledge what happened without judgment. Two is identify just one thing that you did that aligned with your values, even if the outcome of that thing wasn't what you wanted. And in some cases, I think especially if the outcome isn't what you wanted. Three, extract one lesson that you can apply to next time. And then four, make one small commitment based on that lesson. For me, this completely transformed how failures affected my self trust. Instead of each disappointment tearing off more tape, it became an opportunity to apply a stronger adhesive. Okay. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, has an incredible journey. After her divorce and time on government assistance, she didn't see her rejected manuscripts as evidence that she couldn't trust her writing capacity or her talent. She reframed every rejection as data that was helping her refine her work. This wasn't about repairing broken trust. It was about creating a new relationship with failure that made trust more resilient. Do you hear this? Okay. When you look at failure differently, you don't fear it. Okay. You question it. That's what makes trust more resilient. That's what confidence is built from. For me, this meant completely changing how I handled setbacks in my post divorce life. Instead of seeing every unsuccessful connection or opportunity as evidence that I couldn't trust my own judgment, I created a new practice. Okay. After each encounter or connection, I would journal 3 things I learned and one way I honored my values. This transformed my failure from trust break to trust build. All right. Here's the bottom line. Trying to repair a broken trust with yourself is like trying to reapply that piece of tape after it's been ripped off. It simply won't hold. Instead of focusing on fixing what was broken, create something entirely new and stronger. And through establishing a new trust agreement, generating consistent evidence, and redefining your relationship with failure, you're going to build a level of self trust that is more powerful than anything you have had before. Think of it this way: you're not in the tape repair business anymore. Okay. You're in the business of finding and creating better, faster, fastening solutions. Okay. Maybe what you need isn't tape at all. Maybe it's screws or a nail or industrial adhesive or a completely different approach to hanging things. I love one of Mel Robbins' quotes. I don't know what part of the book it's in, the 5 second rule. She says this: the 5 second rule isn't about feeling ready. It's about training your brain that you'll do what you say even when you don't feel like doing it. Your challenge today is to identify one small way that you can start generating evidence of trustworthiness with yourself. Maybe it's honoring your bedtime. Okay. Speaking up in one situation where you'd normally stay silent, or maybe it's simply acknowledging a truth that you've been avoiding. Start with evidence, not intention or promises, and watch as a new, stronger trust begins to form. I promise you, if you follow this, you're going to see that happen, and it's going to happen overnight. So if today's training hit home, again, I'm going to ask you to think about 2 people in your sphere of influence that you feel would need this message, could use it right now, or anything else that we're doing here, and invite them to join this community, Becoming Bulletproof. Let's please help build this community up. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube or Instagram. I'm on TikTok mostly right now at This Bulletproof Life. And obviously, right here in the community, we're going to be doing a lot here. So thanks so much for spending this time with me tonight, Friday Night Live. Your attention means a lot, and I don't take it for granted. If something from today's episode resonated with you, please share it in the comments. Let's talk about this some more and start this conversation. And don't forget, invite 2 people that you know may be struggling with trusting themselves after their own life transition. Sometimes all it takes is one new perspective to completely transform somebody's relationship with themselves. All right. So until next time, remember this: don't waste your energy trying to make that old piece of tape stick. Create something new that bonds even stronger than it would have before. So until next time, have a great weekend. Remember to stay strong and stay bulletproof, and we'll see you guys later. Have a great weekend.